Do you want hot takes?
No, I'm not going to apologize to Ryan Day. Everything we said about Ryan Day up into the playoffs was true.
Not bad. Come on, Kenner. You can do better than that.
To be fair, of all the elite quarterbacks in the NFL, Joe Burrow is the least accomplished.
Getting better.
1,000,000%. I 1,000,000% believe that the Dayton Flyers are afraid of the Wright State Raiders. That's why they come up with every excuse in the book not to play them.
There it is. The hottest take of them all. It's the Justin Kenner Show, presented by Frickers, live on 1410 ESPN Radio.
All right, everybody, welcome in. Happy Tuesday, the Justin Kenner Show, presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. Lieutenant Governor Jim Tressel, he's going to hang out with us coming up here in about 40 minutes. We got plenty to talk about. Michigan week, I know we didn't spend a ton of time on that yesterday, but I'll make sure that we spend plenty of time on that today, especially with Lieutenant Governor of the state, Jim Tressel, joining us coming up here in just a little bit. Okay. For years now, I have caught a ton of heat for my take regarding the biggest rivalry in all of sports. You know, is it the biggest rivalry in all of sports? I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's not, because I think that it's the most talked about rivalry in all of sports. I think that's for sure. But the bottom line is, for years, I have been very frustrated because I feel like Ryan Day's biggest problem is I've always felt, even when he first took over as head coach, that there was times when he would be talking about the rivalry and I just didn't feel like it was genuine. I think that the reason that the rivalry beats Ryan Day so often is because I think Ryan Day is the ultimate competitor, and his goal is to win a national championship, which is why he has been able to build a national championship quality team year in and year out. And I think that when he talks about what it takes to win a national championship, I think that resonates with the team. I think the team buys in. I think it's a genuine reaction. I think that people buy into Ryan Day when it comes to that. What I don't think people do with Ryan Day is buy in to this philosophy of the rivalry. And I'll explain. I think that now it's believable. Ryan Day has been tortured by this rivalry. Ryan Day has been, just absolutely bullied by this rivalry, to the point now when Ryan Day talks about the importance of the rivalry, I believe him. I didn't believe him when he took over, because I, like Ryan Day, probably when he took over, I had the mindset of, I'm not going to recruit this kid to come here to beat Michigan. I'm recruiting this kid to come here to win a national championship. I know what Urban Meyer says. Urban Meyer says, we're recruiting you to come here to beat Michigan. Stop. Urban Meyer was able to go undefeated against Michigan and win a national championship, so he could say whatever he wants. But the bottom line is at the end of the day, it's all about national championships. Ohio State didn't bring Urban Meyer to Columbus just to beat that team up north. They brought Urban Meyer to Columbus so that they would be in position to win national championships. The good thing during the Urban Meyer era is that they got to have their cake and they got to eat it too. They didn't have to worry about losing to Michigan, and they didn't have to worry about not winning a national championship because they accomplished everything you could imagine during the Urban Meyer era. But Ryan Day, I always felt like when he would talk about the rivalry, when he would talk about Michigan, he wanted to beat Michigan, but he wanted to beat Purdue. He wanted to beat Michigan State. He wanted to beat Rutgers. He wants to beat every team in the Big Ten, which is why he's always dominated the Big Ten, except for one particular opponent. And it's the opponent that has continued to bully him. The rivalry has bullied him. It has overwhelmed him. But the one saving grace that Ryan Day has now is the fact that he's a national championship winning head coach. And I think that matters more than anything else. I will never, you want to talk about how big this rivalry is, fine. You want to say it's the biggest rivalry in sports, fine. But if you want me to believe that the only thing that matters is the rivalry, I can't get on board with that. If you want me to believe that beating Michigan and not winning a national championship is more acceptable than winning a national championship and not beating Michigan, I can't get on board with that. There's no way you're a true competitor. Because everything in life, from the time that we got involved in sports, from the time we're little to now, no matter what the YMCA wants to tell you, what was at least the slogan at the YMCA when I was growing up, it's not about who has more points than the other. It's about who's having more fun. Now winning's fun. Winning's fun. Stop it with that. I mean, that's ridiculous. You're setting these kids up to fail if you try to tell them that, hey, it doesn't matter the result of what you're trying to accomplish as long as you're having fun doing it. Not going to get very far in life with that mentality, I tell you that much. So the bottom line is you want to master whatever it is you're doing. So I'm not going to sit here and say that it's okay to say that, well, beating Michigan is the only thing that matters. Ryan Day proved last year, not the case. Last year, Ohio State, they beat Michigan, or they lost to Michigan. The sky was falling. Ryan Day needed to be fired. And then he went on to kick Tennessee's ass, Oregon's ass in the Rose Bowl. I was there. It was a great time. Took care of business against Texas and then rolled over Notre Dame in the national championship game. So as we sit here right now, I cannot sit there and get on board with anybody who says that this rivalry is bigger than anything else. This feels like a big game. For the first time all season, Ohio State has a game that we're talking about on Monday and going to be talking about every day leading up to kickoff. Finally, a game that's worth the damn, because this season has not been able to provide that. But I know you want to beat your rival. I know it's different than anything else. But I think that the reason that Ryan Day struggles in this rivalry is because I don't think that he believes it the way you all do. I don't think he buys into it the way everybody else does. But I do believe that because he was consistently lost over the last couple of years, and because losing to Michigan has just been pounded upside his head, I think he now knows, oh my gosh, I got to win to beat Michigan, not because it means more than winning a national championship, but it's to shut you up. He wants to beat Michigan on Saturday, not because it's the most important thing in the world. It's because it's going to shut you up. Winning a national championship is all that matters. Winning national championships should be all that matters. Beating Michigan should be a secondary goal. And I think deep down, you guys all know it. I think Urban Meyer deep down knew it was a secondary goal, but he had to put on the facade that, no, it's all about this. I believe him that it means a lot. I believe Coach Tressel, who we're going to talk to coming up here shortly, that it means a lot. But what I cannot get on board with is pretending that it is the end-all be-all, because it is not. Imagine if Ross Bjork, the athletic director for Ohio State last year, would have said, you know what? Enough is enough. 4 straight losses to Michigan. We got to cut ties. We got to go find a coach that could beat Michigan. Well, had you done that, you would have let go of now the only second or third active coach in college football that actually has a national championship. Ryan Day is only the third active coach in college football right now that has actually won a national championship. And you guys wanted Ohio State to push him out because he couldn't win one game, when that one game didn't prevent Ohio State from doing what the ultimate goal is, and that's winning a national championship. I want them to beat Michigan on Saturday. I dislike Michigan as well. I hate that cheating scumbag program. I hate that they act like they're on the same planet as Ohio State, but they keep beating Ohio State. It doesn't make any sense. In fact, the only thing I can compare it to is in recent years, the Bengals have been a Super Bowl contender. The Browns haven't. And up until the last 2 years, the Browns have owned the Bengals, and the Browns are not a contender. The Bengals are a contender, but the Bengals couldn't beat the non-contender in the Browns. But losing to the Browns, like the year they went to the Super Bowl, they got their ass kicked by the Browns. The year they went to the second straight year of going to the AFC Championship, they got their ass kicked by the Browns. You hate Cleveland. You can't stand losing to Cleveland. It makes your skin crawl. But ultimately, losing to Cleveland never prevented you from accomplishing what you ultimately set your goal out to do, which was, it never stopped you from ultimately accomplishing what you wanted. You got to a Super Bowl. You got to back AFC Championship games. You lost to the Browns both years that happened. You hate losing them. That's the only thing I can compare it to. The Browns and the Bengals are not on the same, or at least weren't on the same playing field. One was a Super Bowl contender, one wasn't. But yet, that national championship contender, that Super Bowl contender, just couldn't seem to beat the other. And by the way, you could bring up Michigan's national championship all you want, the one with the Nationals next to it, the one with, that took a cheating scandal to be able to do it and accomplish it. We could sit here. I saw Michigan fans today making fun of Ryan Day in his breaking point last year, and just, how he was just looking like he was crazy because of this game, because of all the fuel, the hatred that comes from the fan base when it comes to this one game. I still don't think Ryan Day's done anything as horrible as, oh man, I can't beat this team. I'm going to go get somebody that's going to come up with the ultimate cheating strategy and category to come out. So you didn't start beating Ohio State until the cheating scandal started. You didn't win a national championship until the cheating scandal started. Cheating scandal went away. Yes, you got a big win over Ohio State last year, but you haven't even come close to looking like a shadow of the team that was dominating during the cheating scandal era. Not championship era, cheating scandal era. Now, Troy on Facebook says, will be interesting if it's a tight game in the second half. OSU has not played anyone since week 1. I agree. Michigan's solid this year. They have played in a lot of close games. They've come out on top on some, not in others. But the bottom line is Ohio State, They have not been tested, but they haven't been tested because of their pure dominance. But if it is a close game, I'm a big fan of Julian Sayin, but Julian Sayin, it's a lot easier to be Julian Sayin when you have two number one caliber wide receivers on the outside, and you're playing with the 3-4 possession lead for 90% of the time you're on the football field. It's a little bit easier to be Julian Sayin. But what happens when the game is on the line, when you have a lead and you need to kill time, and, if you're trailing by possession and you need to lead your team down the field, it's a little bit different. Something that we don't know about this team. We don't know how Ohio State's going to respond in a couple of those situations. And that's something that we're going to learn more and talk about with Jim Tressel coming up later on in the show. I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. For years now, people have said that the rivalry game just doesn't mean as much as it used to. And I was listening to Sports Talk in Columbus today, and my gosh, every single show was doing the same thing. Oh, you're crazy if you think this rivalry doesn't mean as much as it used to. It's okay to say it doesn't while also acknowledging the significance of the rivalry. I think this rivalry is massive. I think it's huge. I just don't think it's everything. Where are you at with that? 937-518-1410. 937-518-1410. You could text that number or call that number. I'd love to hear from you. Your thoughts. The rivalry, does it mean as much as it used to? Does it only not mean as much because Ohio State hasn't been winning over the last half decade? Or does it not mean as much because ultimately the game isn't in the way of you accomplishing what you want, and that's winning a national championship? 937-518-1410. Your calls, your reaction, your takes when we come back.
Jamar Chase spits on players. Kinner spits hot takes. The Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio.
Ohio State, Michigan, it's Michigan week. Biggest rivalry in all of sports, and that's what we're opening up the show with today. 937-518-1410, the number to call and jump in on the conversation. Lieutenant Governor of the state, Jim Tressel, former Buckeye coach. I mean, I don't really need to do the whole title and what he did. You all know who the hell Jim Tressel is. He's going to hop on with us coming up here in about 20 minutes. And again, looking forward to chat with him. Actually, I think, no, they said in about 12 minutes. I'm sorry, 3:30. So in about 12 minutes, we're going to be joined by Jim Tressel. So I threw this out there. And this really isn't, I mean, I don't think it's as hot take-ish today as what it was a few years ago, but I've always kind of rolled my eyes, and I've always been in the minority on this. I love the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry. I love any rivalry. I love when you could just feel the dislike and the competitive hatred for one another. I love a rivalry that forces a team to have to find a way to cheat, to not just win the rivalry game, but to ultimately win a national championship. I love a rivalry that puts a coach in a position like Ryan Day last year, where when the clock hit zero and they lost for the fourth straight time, Ryan Day walked around like as if he saw a ghost. He had no clue where he was. There was chaos all around him. He had Sawyer ready to throw down with anyone not wearing scarlet and gray. And that same guy with that puzzled look on his face ultimately found a way to get a locker room to buy back in not even a month later and go on to win a national championship. I love good competitive rivalries. But if the rivalry was the only thing that mattered, like some of you try to convince me it is, then why didn't Ohio State just quit last year after losing? Why did they even partake in the playoff? Why did they all of a sudden become motivated to go win a national championship? Because ultimately the only thing that truly matters is going on to win a national championship. And as we learned last year, you can get it done without having to win this game. But what makes this game even sweeter is the opportunity to win this game and ultimately win a national championship, which technically Michigan did a few years ago. But we all know we can't just say that normal as if they didn't cheat to win it. They did cheat. But does this rivalry feel like it is, like it's not what it used to be? I'm going to say yes from this perspective. Last year, the end result of the game led you to believe that this rivalry is still the biggest thing in all of sports. It's the biggest rivalry in all of sports. Don't get me wrong. But it's not this massive aura that it once was. It felt like it because Michigan won as a 3-possession dog last year. But I'm talking about the buildup to it. To me, a rivalry feels like you should feel the rivalry on Monday. And I know we play Michigan and talked about it yesterday, but I remember doing this show 6, 7, 8 years ago, and it just felt bigger. And the reason, and even a couple of years ago, even though I'm not even saying that the years that Ohio State wins, the rivalry feels big, and on the years that Ohio State doesn't, that it doesn't. But those years that Michigan really was sitting in the top 5 consistently, and Ohio State was a top 10 team, top 5 team consistently, that felt big. And it felt big because you had two teams who were ultimately good enough to accomplish that end feat, which is win a national championship. The reason that this week doesn't feel as big, although there is an angle here, the Ohio State's lost 4 straight years to Michigan. So, of course, we're intrigued by it. We're going to tune in. We're always going to tune in. But the reason it feels like something is because Ohio State's just trying to put an end to that 4-game losing streak. But the reason is because Michigan doesn't consistently carry their end of the bargain. And when they're not cheating, they're a team that's not really viewed as a national championship contender. They weren't even a playoff contender last year, and the playoff tripled in size. You take cheating away, they can't even make a playoff that tripled in size from the last time they were in when they won a national championship. Back-to-back years of this playoff being tripled in size since the last time they made it, they're not going to make it again. But you have Ohio State, who's the number 1 team in the country. They're undefeated. They're the reigning national champions. And they're, in my opinion, should be thinking about swimming in deeper waters and messing around with this non-playoff team. You got to beat this non-playoff team, of course. But to me, it's just one of those where when we get back to where Michigan and Ohio State are regulars, all right, when they are regular national championship contenders at the same time, or at least at the very same playoff contenders, then great. People kept saying that they're mad at the format. I think it was Shaw in the comment section who brought up the fact that, that the rivalry He said the rivalry changed when college football changed. As soon as you could lose the game, it did not matter anymore. The rivalry lost a piece of its significance. I get that to a certain extent, but also if Bryce Underwood was a Heisman contender and Julian Sayin also a Heisman contender, we're going head-to-head. If Michigan was a top 5 team like they should be and a national championship contender, just like Ohio State is, we wouldn't be having this conversation. This would be a massive showdown. It's a big showdown. It would be a massive showdown if these two teams were consistently at the top. And one team consistently is at the top and the other isn't. And I know we're a few years removed from Michigan winning a national championship, but that was new territory for them. They're not used to being at the top of the food chain like that. They always get lumped into this category with Ohio State, and they're just not that. And that's not an arrogant Buckeye fan saying that. That's just the reality of it. The reason the rivalry, the feeling of it started to go away is because at one point Ohio State won 17 of 19 against Michigan. Of course, it started to lose a little bit of its feel. You had one team that was absolutely dominant, and the other team was living off its success from decades ago. I think that if Ohio State and Michigan were both national championship contenders and not just Ohio State year in and year out, I think this would feel a lot bigger. Yes, it has taken a little bit of a hit because it used to be the only way to accomplish your ultimate goal of winning a national championship was to beat one another. That's no longer the case. Ohio State technically should have 2 national championships over the last 5 years. If you think back to the year that they lost to Georgia in the semifinals, that was when ultimately Georgia would go on to bludgeon what was it, TCU or whatever it was. Like that would have been Ohio State blowing out that team had they beat Georgia. And had they done that, they would have been able to accomplish that all while losing to Michigan as well. So ultimately, the rivalry isn't preventing anyone from accomplishing what they need to do. But Michigan is constantly finding reasons to not ultimately accomplish being in the running for what they want to do, and that's being a national championship contender. It's like you got your national championship with Harbaugh. It all doesn't matter anymore. I don't blame Ohio State for why losing 4 straight is not why this rivalry doesn't feel like it used to anymore. It's the fact that too many times, year in and year out, Michigan is not a national championship contender. Mike, what up, Mike? Mike says Michigan wins this week and they will probably be a playoff team. I think OSU losing 4 straight has hurt the rivalry more. I disagree. I don't think that's hurt the rivalry at all. If anything, it's only made it somewhat more relevant and talked about because no one was, losing 17 of 19 to Ohio State, I think that's way more damning than losing 4 straight against a team that had to cheat to ultimately accomplish what they wanted to accomplish. You could argue that last year was the only real clean win that Michigan had over Ohio State. Shaw says in the chat, yes, we would be having this conversation. We had this conversation in 22 and Ohio State made the playoffs after losing to Michigan. The fact that losing the game doesn't mean everything is the issue. I think that Michigan's not worth a damn anymore is the issue. And they weren't worth the damn other than that last 3-year stretch when Harbaugh had them rolling and cheating. Before that, they weren't worth anything. They weren't a championship contender. They never made the 14 playoff. Or I'm sorry, they made the last one. My apologies. They made the last 14 playoff. Like, in my opinion, that's where we're at. So we're also live on the ESPN Dayton's YouTube channel. Shout out to Kirk. Kirk on YouTube says, it's a rivalry. It doesn't mean as much as it once did, and I feel the playoff has changed that for better or worse. I am, however, a fan of the new playoff format. Yeah, me too. I didn't think I would be, but I know that all the games coming up are just going to be massive in the next month. It's made the regular season this past year feel a little Still a lot of good games, a lot of peak moments, but ultimately we've kind of known this playoff picture for a while. There might be a slight movement at the end, but nonetheless. Rob, what up, Rob? Rob on YouTube says the Michigan run is over, so it just feels like we're back on top, and they are no threat. They're a threat. They're a threat in a head-to-head, but it would feel even bigger if they were a threat in a national championship picture as well. Like, imagine if Ohio State and Michigan both made the playoff and there was a chance that because a lot of people said they hate the format change because they don't want Ohio State and Michigan to face each other in back-to-back weeks. Oh my, I think that would make it even more massive. What would happen if they ran into each other again in a month in the college football playoff with the chance to advance to win a national championship? That's how you get the rivalry back. It's there. I will never say it's not there. But people are upset about it. I'm like, the only thing that could save it actually is this expanded 12-team playoff because it's going to expand the opportunity of these two teams running into each other again. Can you imagine if Ohio State, Michigan had to get through one another in the playoff to advance to put themselves in position to win the national championship? Imagine if, for whatever reason, the seeding works out to where they clash in the national championship. Imagine Ohio State, Michigan in the Big Ten championship game. I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show. Let's go to Xenia, 937-518-1410. Paul and Xenia, thanks for holding, sir. Paul, you there?
It's Justin.
Yes, sir. You're on live, so watch your mouth just in case you're going to cuss at me.
Well, I'm not going to cuss at you. I'm going to just point out a couple things.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
I was born April 2nd, 1938, and at the age of 6, when I started school in the first grade, they would not let you in school the first day unless you could sing all 44 verses of the Ohio State fight song.
Can you sing all 44 verses of the Ohio State fight song right now?
That being said, I was able to successfully do that. Therefore, I was allowed to start school in the first grade. Now, I live and die with the Buckeyes. Before the 4 straight that the Buckeyes lost to that school up north, I come very close to jumping off the bridge down there between Columbus and Cincinnati.
Well, that's a little dramatic, don't you think?
No, that's not dramatic. I'm just a Buckeye fan.
I mean, I'm a Buckeye fan. I'm afraid of heights. I ain't jumping off no bridge.
Well, Justin, I need to ask you one thing, and this will settle this once and for all.
All right.
Where were you born? Was you born in Ohio?
Sir, you're right. I know this is going to settle it for you. I was born in 1989 in El Paso, Texas.
Well, that's why you don't.
That's why.
You don't care about the Buckeyes.
I don't know about that.
You've been born in the state of Ohio. It is 100% sure that you would be a Buckeyes fan, and if you don't believe me, you can ask Keith Byers.
I'll ask Keith Byers. We'll definitely ask Keith Byers. How about that?
Keith Byers is definitely 100% a Buckeye fan, not 99.9%. He is 100% a Buckeye fan, and he goes to every game, every home game, and he probably goes to a lot of the away games, if not all of them. Because
he was golfing. To be fair, this is the guy that was golfing at Pebble Beach. He missed the last home game. He was golfing at Pebble Beach. He don't go to every game. I know he doesn't go to every game because I get his tickets when he doesn't go to those games.
Oh, let me ask you something. You used to have a show with it was called Kenner and Kev. What happened to Kev?
Kev's my boss now. He's my boss now. He's doing boss man stuff. He doesn't have time to hang out and talk sports in the afternoon.
Is that right? I really enjoyed it when you and him used to go head to head.
That's because I would lose a lot of those battles. Yeah. You're
breaking up, Justin.
I said you would have agreed. You like Kev because he agrees with you. You and him have the same take.
I really enjoyed it when you and Kev would talk sports.
Yeah, so did I. But all right.
All
right, Paul. We tried. Don't be jumping off bridges. If Ohio State loses on Saturday, okay, I work for a small AM radio station. I don't have many listeners. I can't have Paul jumping off a bridge because Ohio State loses to Michigan. I can't lose a listener. For one, I value his life, yes, but I value listeners. I can't have my listeners jumping off bridges because Ohio State loses to Michigan. I think that's a little dramatic. I think that's a little much. So regardless of the result of Saturday, I need Paul, not Rob. Sorry, I was reading Rob's response in the chat. What I need is for Paul to be the first caller on Monday so that I know everything is A-okay with old Paul and Xenia. So there you go. But yes, I am from El Paso, Texas. But I also, people say that, oh, you don't get it because you're not from here. I've lived here for pretty much my entire adult life. I've been a Buckeye fan my entire adult life. I'm a ginormous Buckeye fan. And I don't think that it makes me less of a fan because I think that winning a national championship is more important than winning a rivalry game. Because I felt pretty damn good last year. And if you not being able to beat Michigan last year prevented you from enjoying winning a national championship, I think that's more on you than me. But shout out to Paul and Xenia. I appreciate him calling, and I hope he continues to call regardless of the result of the game on Saturday nonetheless. Let's see. So we're on YouTube. Adam, what up, Adam? Adam on YouTube says people like Paul would rather go 1-11 and beat that team up north and win the whole thing. It's not like it used to be. Championships are king. I gotta be honest, Adam. When people say it's not like it used to be, championships matter then too. Championships matter then too. All right, I'm getting word that I'm going to pretend I didn't say any of this. Jim Tressel's about to come on with this coming up here in 5 minutes. And I'm going to be the biggest Buckeye homer in the world in this interview. I'm going to make myself sick. I'm not going to disrespect the vest. I'm not going to tell him, of all people, that I don't think that it's the biggest rivalry in the world. It's a big-time rivalry. I love the rivalry. Don't put words in my mouth now. I'm just saying. But Colton, what up, Colton? Colton said, I would lose to Michigan every year if it guaranteed an Ohio State championship the same year. Colton, me and you are on the same boat. And let's be clear, I would not enjoy losing to Michigan. I would not have a smile on my face. Because I also thought it was pretty disgraceful of Ohio State to lose as a 3-possession, 21-point favorite last year, not just because it's Michigan, but because it's anybody. Ohio State was a 33.5-point favorite against Rutgers this past weekend. Well, let's be honest. If they would have lost to Rutgers, I would have been as embarrassed about that as I was after they lost to Michigan last year in the final game of the regular season. Ohio State's better. They're the better program. They're the better team. You're in and almost you're out. When they're not cheating, of course. Ohio State's the better program, the better team. So there's that. But I'm with you, Colton. I'm with you. So nonetheless, continuing to go down the list. I'll read more of these coming up here around the corner. But nonetheless, 937-518-1410. In all seriousness, shout out to Paul. I appreciate Paul calling. And I can't take all your calls right now. We do have a guest coming up. We're going to get to Jim Tressel, Lieutenant Governor of the state of Ohio, former Buckeye coach, national championship winning head coach of your Ohio State Buckeyes. And by the way, I lived in Ohio when Tressel won the Buckeyes a national championship. I graduated from Van Wert High School. They had a guy from Van Wert named Joel Penton. I was all locked in with the Buckeyes. Not that I need to defend that to you, but either way. Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. The Vest, the Lieutenant Governor of the state of Ohio, former national championship winning head coach for your Ohio State Buckeyes, Mr. Jim Tressel, joins us next. All right, and we are back. It is the Justin Kinner Show, and we are live here on Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. It's Michigan week, and we've been spending a lot of time on that the last couple of days, of course, and we'll continue to spend time on it throughout the week. We had the Keith Byers Show earlier today as well, and he's going to pop in studio with us coming up here later on. I know he's bummed, though, because he wanted to be in studio when we brought on our next guest, of course, the Lieutenant Governor of the state, former Ohio State head coach, the legend himself, Mr. Jim Tressel. Coach Tressel, welcome in, sir. How are we today?
I'm doing great, but more importantly, I was Keith Byers' position coach when he was toting the rock there at Ohio State, and he made me look like a good coach.
You taught him everything. Oh, so you're saying you didn't teach him everything he knows?
No, I didn't teach him a thing. I just, made sure that he made the bus on time. He was a special player. His year in 1984, I think people forget about that one a little bit, but he had, 1,700 and some yards and 40 some catches, and clearly was the best player in the country. Unfortunately, Flutie threw that pass, that got all the acclaim, and Keith ended up number 2 in the Heisman, but special player. And then, his NFL career, I don't know, what was it, 16 years or something crazy, and just a better guy.
So he always says, too, when he does see Flutie, he always asks him if he's keeping his trophy clean and nice and warm. And, he doesn't hide that. He felt he should have wanted to.
That's right. That's right.
But, Coach, I appreciate your time. Look, it's Michigan week, and we all know that this week is different than any other week. I mean, it's a rivalry that separates itself from all other rivalries. But, look, I know you get these questions a lot, but I have to ask. Like this week, I know today's Tuesday, but yesterday you wake up, it's Michigan week. What is going through your mind? Do you sleep a lot this week? Like, are the nerves? What is this week like from a coach's perspective? You've coached in this rivalry. What was your routine like on the week leading up? Because while your family's excited about Thanksgiving, you're probably mentally just like, yeah, we got a big game on Saturday.
Yeah, you do all you can the Saturday before this week to stay focused on the task at hand. And it's hard because everyone's anticipating, what we've been building toward, playing our best at the end of the regular season and getting a chance to play in the greatest game there is. And so as soon as that game ends, your entire thought process goes to all of the things you've been preparing the entire year, all of the work that the guys put in. You're looking closely at what you've become through the first part of the season. And of course, you're studying everything that Michigan did. And what's fun is when you're playing all those other teams and you're watching the crossover films, you always have a special eye when they're playing Michigan. And so you're thinking to yourself, we might have to think about such and such. But once this week hits, it's so much fun. There's so much tradition. Every era of Ohio State football and every era of Michigan football has their own signature way they do the tradition. Earl did it maybe a little differently than Woody, and John did it differently than Earl, and we did it a little differently than John, and Urban did it a little differently than we did, and Ryan's got his own signature, but that you're gonna every minute during the week's meaningful and exciting, and you look forward to certain parts of the journey that week, and then you get to the point about halfway through the week that it's just like, hey, let's get this over with. Let's get to the game. We've been ready for this game since July. And so a lot of different emotions go through.
Obviously, as you know, one of the biggest reasons that this rivalry blossomed into what it was is because, to accomplish what you ultimately wanted to accomplish, you couldn't accomplish it unless you defeated one another, and that was to win a national championship. Obviously, times have changed, and we just saw a very weird dynamic last year where Ohio State loses to Michigan, unfortunately, for the 4th straight year, but then ultimately they get the last laugh because they're the ones hoisting up the trophy at the end. Just how strange of a dynamic is that not only can you still win a national championship regardless of this result, but you could also potentially play each other again. You could potentially see, and not just because the playoff, but the Big Ten championship format as well. So much has changed since you were coaching last. I mean, the dynamic of all of this has changed so much.
Well, when I was growing up, the winner of this game was the only team that got to go to a bowl, typically, because usually it was whoever won this went to the Rose Bowl. Well, then all of a sudden, a lot more bowls. But so often it came down to the winner of this game got a darn good chance of being the Big Ten champion. Now, as you say, it's a different world. You might end up playing one another in the championship game a week later. That would be strange, just like last year was strange in that, we came up short. But to the credit of Coach Day and his senior leadership, they decided after that game there were going to be no more losses. And you could just see their jaws were locked and they were going to work, and they brought us home a national championship. Probably an unusual situation. It would be hard for me to fathom that happening anytime soon, that the loser of that game ends up, being the national champion. You never know. But every year, and that's what's fun about football, is you can't predict what's going to happen. And I wouldn't have necessarily bet that going into this game this year that the winner of this game, either one, was going to be the going to the Big Ten championship game, because I think Michigan probably came along a little bit more than maybe we thought they might. Penn State wasn't quite the team that everyone thought. Indiana's been a little bit more than people thought. A little bit more real, but again, that's the fun of it. But all that being said, there's nothing that you remember more the older you get than how you did in your rival game. I mean, think back to high school. You still think about that rival school across the road, regardless of how those seasons ended. You might have entered with a poor season, but if you beat the folks across the street, that's memories for life. So that's what makes this one fun, and looking forward to seeing it.
You mentioned it. I had it in my notes here for today, but I remember when the clock hit 0 last year, Ryan Day just had this, looked like he saw a ghost. It's like it was like an outer body experience. He was walking around the field. There's so much chaos and commotion going on, and you could just feel the pain after losing that game. And I say, look, he's obviously done a tremendous coaching job outside of the rivalry, of course, but for what he did from that time that clock hit 0 until the time that they hoisted that national championship trophy, I don't think people give him enough credit, because somehow that guy with that ghosted look on his face somehow got that locker room to rally and buy back in, and believing that they had a chance to not just win the next game, but to win the next 4 to go on to win it. I don't get how that coaching staff got that team after that chaotic loss to buy back in, but he did it. And for the next month and some change, that was just a different football team.
Well, and that's why you have to, that's a coaching, job for the ages. You'll put that one aside and say, wow, that was spectacular. But I think it showed how close that group was. I thought I had a chance to be at practice a little bit more last year than I did this year. I took this new job that's kind of gotten me a little bit busy, but you could see how close that team was. They withstood the disappointment there in Oregon, where they really could have won that game, and kept getting better, kept getting closer. Didn't play well necessarily in the rival game, but that didn't allow them to fracture. Mm-hmm. And we knew they had the ability. And then when you saw the draw, that was, it's like, okay, we're going to get Tennessee at home. They better buckle up, especially with the emotion that was penned up in our guys. Then we get to play Oregon again. You talk about, they're not going to get us again. And who do we have next? Who was after
Texas? It was
there was
Texas and then Notre Dame. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So Texas, who you're going to be ready for that one. And, Notre Dame, that's a natural rival. So that was a great, we were involved in the playoffs a lot at Youngstown State. And every time the playoff brackets came out, you were like, ooh, if we can do our thing, we got a good draw. There were other years were like, ooh, I don't know who was mad at us, but we got, in fact, my Penguins on Saturday at noon are playing Yale, in the first round. But that's the fun of the November football and now into December and all the rest. But this is a different team. It's in some ways, looking at them at practice, the few times I've been there, it's maybe a better looking team than we had a year ago. Just looking. We'll see if they're as close. That will be the key. If they're as close as they were a year ago, emotionally, we've got a chance to do something special again.
You know, the last time I had a chance to sit down and speak with you, you may not remember, but it was at University of Dayton Arena. It was the OHSA State Basketball Championships, and it was before the season had started, the 12-team college football playoff. We hadn't seen it yet, but you had mentioned, obviously, with your experience coaching and you know, with the expanded playoff or the larger playoff and the lower divisions, that it's not just so much about talent, it's about depth, and it's about being healthy heading into that playoff.
Yeah.
And as we sit here right now, Ohio State, number one team in the country, undefeated, looking to win that rivalry game to propel hopefully another national championship run. But health is a concern right now for two key components, Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate, of course. You mentioned it a year ago when we spoke, but obviously health, a big concern for this rivalry game, but obviously big picture for a potential national championship run.
No, I think there's no question. In fact, Ryan and I talked a lot about that last year, especially when we were a little dinged up there in the middle and the back half of the season. And offensive lines need to work together. And, we're missing a guy here. And then McLaughlin went down and it was like, but fortunately, by the time we got to the playoffs, that group had molded together. And we were healthier maybe going into the Tennessee game than we were all year. That's why it was a blessing that the two receivers didn't have to play a bunch 2 weeks ago and didn't play at all this past week. And I'm hoping that they'll do nothing but get healthier. And I don't know about the rest of the lineups, O and D, if we're banged up at all. I know that at the game, I was at the game Saturday, the smaller Styles went out with a little bit of a shoulder. Did he come back in the game?
Yes, he came back a little bit later.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, good. So, you don't want to lose any of your guys, especially going into this game. And the one thing that I remember vividly as an assistant coach, first time that I coached in this game, I knew the magnitude as a fan. I did not know the magnitude as a coach or a player. And watching our guys get ready, I remember there was an offensive center who had a terrible ankle sprain, that he was putting this stuff on that they put on horses when they have bad ankles to get ready to run a race that smelled terrible, but he wasn't missing that game, it's a different thing. But yes, to your point, we need to be healthy as we can going into this football game, but going into the Big Ten championship game and then all the rest, health is a factor.
Obviously, you haven't coached at the college level for quite some time, but just kind of curious your thoughts on the landscape of college football right now. If you were coaching today, obviously it's different because of NIL and everything else. And NIL always has such a negative connotation around it just because the way that it's utilized. But obviously the base of it is it could be positively distributed as many people know. But where are you at right now with the state of college football? We hear Nick Saban so much, legends of the game like yourself and others who are out of the game now, who have all these ideas of how to make it better, or at least kind of, make it to where it's more just even across the board. How would you fix college football right now? Or do you even think it needs fixing?
Well, I'm an NIL fan in that I think they should have been getting, as the revenue was going up, we should have been smart enough 40 years ago to say, hey, look, we've got a share in this. We're selling the jerseys, all this, video games, and come on. But no, we didn't. For 40 years, we didn't. And then all of a sudden, poof, it exploded. So what do? It's like if you had 73 donuts a day and then all of a sudden you had a heart attack. You pray that it's not fatal. You then change your behavior. We've got to figure out, how are we going to change our behavior? How are we, we pray that it's not fatal to college football.
Yeah.
And I think college football is too big to die. So, I think we'll be okay there. But how are we going to change our behavior? How are we going to get together and say, okay, what's the right things to do? The key, like anything else, will be, who's leading those efforts. I'm not sure. Is it the commissioners? Is it, you hear Congress, you hear people weighing in. I think the first thing you asked the question, if I were in charge of the world, what would I do? I think the first thing you have to do is first decide what are your desired outcomes. What is it that you want to happen? Because it's become such an entertainment business, and the revenue, shows that it's huge entertainment. But so much of the value of it's an educational experience, and it's the team experience, and it's the university experience, and those kinds of things. So how do you merge the two and have everyone treated properly? Right now I'm afraid that because it's so wild west, that there's some fallout that we don't hear about. We hear about the guy that transferred from here to here to here, making this much money and doing great. We don't hear about any of the ones that it didn't work out for them, and that maybe got a little bit of money, didn't go well, and all of a sudden now I worry a little bit about the mental health. I worry, young people who thought that this was going to be the answer to the rest of their world, and then there's going to be somewhere it doesn't work out. Here's the problem with football. Every game, half the teams lose. That's just the way it is, right? And only 11 guys get to play. There's only one football spread around. There's only, so much. So we've got to first figure out what is it we'd like to have it look like, and then figure out how can you legally do that. See, the tough part is the legal part of things. Yep. So many things that the NCAA thought they wanted to do ended up, didn't hold in court. And so I think that's a conversation that you better get the right people in the room who have the right legal counsel in the room, so that you can make good decisions that are good for the kids, number one, good for the universities, as level a playing field as you can get. The NFL did a great job with that. When they put their thing together, it was like, hey, if you were the last place team, you get the first place pick, all those kinds of things. Well, I don't know who, East Carolina, I don't think they're going to get the top 5-star recruit, unless you made the rule that they get it, which is what the NFL did. Well, do you want to do that to college kids, 18-year-olds, and say, hey, look, you got picked by Fresno State, or you got picked by Washington, but you live in, Ohio. So very complicated, but for the good of the game and the good of the kids, we got to get it figured out.
All right. Well, good stuff. Former Ohio State coach, Lieutenant Governor of the state, Jim Tressel, awesome enough to give us some time here. Michigan week, rivalry week, excited for that matchup coming up on Saturday. You mentioned it earlier that, you don't have as much time to go to practices and stuff because of the other job that you took over. So your hands are full with a lot of projects. But before we let you go, if you don't mind, because I do know that signups for Ohio schools are currently going on right now for the Team Tressel Fitness Challenge. Tell us a little bit about the Team Tressel Fitness Challenge and how Ohio high schools can get involved.
Yeah, back in June, the governor said to us, hey, one thing I haven't gotten done yet has created a fitness challenge for our youth. Go figure it out, and I'd like it to start this fall. And we were like, ooh, that's big dude. So we got a bunch of people together, educators, principals, people that run training centers, lots of different people, and said, okay, what do our youth need? What would help them? What youth should we shoot for? Well, we settled on 4th to 8th graders, decided to have a pilot, create a fitness challenge that was fitness-oriented, nutrition-oriented, sleep-oriented. Got Teddy Ginn Jr. to come and help us as our challenge captain, and Teddy and I kind of run around the state and so forth. And we just put a pitch out there saying, hey, if you want to be a part of a pilot for our Team Tressel Fitness Challenge, sign up. Well, 700 schools signed up, 183,000 kids are taking part. It's been a blast. It's been huge impact. You can just see difference it's made with young kids in their schools and their families. And in the midst of the challenge, we went around and had some roundtable discussions with the areas and said, well, how can we do this better for you, schools? And so that you can get more kids involved, it'd be more effective. And they gave us good ideas. We've added 3rd graders for round 2. Our goal is to be at 350,000 students for this round 2 pilot here that begins in February. The principals can sign up on teamtressel.ohio.gov. They've all got information. They all know that. And we've kind of broken it up into a 3rd and 4th grade curriculum, 5th and 6th grade curriculum, and a 7th and 8th, because we found out that the 8th graders and the 4th graders think different things are cool. The 8th graders didn't love the cartoons, and so forth. So anyway, it's been a blast. We've got about 80 of our former student athletes involved adopting schools around the state. We want to grow that because that's a great experience for young kids to meet young adults who have, found that fitness is important. They've done some exciting things. And so we're out there pounding the pavement, hoping to February is twice as big as the first one was. And I appreciate you bringing it up. Let's face it. If we have healthy habits, we're going to be better at everything we do. We're going to be better students. We're going to be better workers. We're going to be better husbands, wives, siblings, friends. You're going to be better when you're healthier. And that's what we're trying to promote. Just like we want to have the best college football team in America, we want to have the healthiest state in America.
Last time I had you on, I know you're a Browns fan. Are you doing the Shador? Do you put the are you?
Is that what he does?
Oh yeah, it's Shador time. So that's what.
That's Shador time. Hey, Shador made a couple plays now. I mean, he made a couple plays there. Now Shador's got to stop throwing it to them. Which
kind of key.
we got to do this, but we got to protect that. But he's got a little bubble to him. He's got a little swagger. He's got, and when you have a defense like ours, Myles Garrett, I think he just keeps getting better. And that kid from Michigan that's playing inside, playing well, that middle linebacker from UCLA, he's a beast. Of course, Denzel is out of this world. And so if we can take care of the football and make some plays, Judkins is playing well. There's some hope up here in Believe Land.
There you go. I said it was like the Bengals, like if they with how elite their offense is, if they just have not even great defense, average defense with that offense, they're going to win a lot of football games. Yeah. Cleveland is the opposite with how elite their defense is. They don't need, you want an elite offense, but they don't even need elite offense. They just 20, 24 points in that range with that defense. They're going to win a lot of football games. And sure enough, 24 points probably gave them a win this past Sunday. But
and we've got, San Francisco comes in.
Yep.
And we hopefully it's a little frigid up there on the lake. And, I think Purdy threw 3 interceptions last night with Myles Garrett chasing him. Maybe we can get him to do it again.
Yeah, maybe get 4. Get 4 this time. All right, well, great stuff. Awesome. Jim Tressel giving us some time here today. Rivalry, the rivalry, the best rivalry in all of sports, Michigan week. Coach, where do you watch this game? Do you like to watch it with a lot of people? Do you like to just be secluded in a room by yourself? How do you take in the Ohio State-Michigan game every year?
Well, last year when it was at home, I stood on the sideline by myself and, got to watch it and feel it. This year, being at the big house, I have no interest in going to the big house. I don't think they have any interest in me being there either, those folks up there. And I've also got my Penguins playing at noon against Yale. So I'm going to seclude, have 2 TVs, keep an eye, head on a swivel, and hope we come up with 2 big wins on Saturday.
Well, definitely hoping it's a victory weekend for the whole state of Ohio. That's for sure. Coach Tressel, thank you so much. I appreciate your time today, and I hope you and your family have an amazing Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving to you. Appreciate it.
All right, good stuff. That was Coach Tressel, awesome enough to give us some time. More of the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers when we return.
family might not understand why you're still mad about a 2019 play call, but we do. 1410 ESPN Radio, where you can argue about sports without worrying about getting uninvited to Thanksgiving.
All right, I appreciate Jim Tressel, Coach Tressel, Lieutenant Governor Tressel, for giving us some time on the show. If you missed that, make sure you are subscribing to the Justin Kidder Show podcast and anywhere you get your podcast. Shows in their entirety, select segments, and all interviews, including the one we just did with Coach Tressel, will be made available to you right when the show ends. So make sure you're subscribing to that. I would appreciate that, trying to grow the numbers on the podcast. So please go do that when you can. Ohio State, Michigan, big week coming up. Jury's still out. I saw someone say earlier, if Michigan, can win this, there is a shot for them to be able to win. Of course, they have a shot to win. I'll no longer say Michigan never has a chance to beat Ohio State after last year's debacle. Ohio State, 3-possession, 21-point favorite, and they lose at home. When you have, Will Howard's in the NFL. All right, you had Jeremiah Smith. You saw Carnell Tate, right? You had Emeka Egbuka. You had Quinshon Judkins. You had Travion Henderson. You had monsters on the defensive side of the ball. And to be fair, the defense showed up. I will never say that Michigan never has a shot to beat. For one, I don't think anyone's technically saying that, but they're a decent sized favorite this year. Not a 21-point favorite like last year, but my goodness, if they couldn't win last year as a 21-point favorite, it's like, you look at the line for this upcoming week and it's like, well, my goodness, Ohio State 9.5. But nonetheless, look, Ohio State, here's the deal with last year's game. And I said it from the beginning. I remember when it came out, I said Ryan Day was so obsessed with having to win a certain way. He didn't just want to beat Michigan. He wanted to beat them, in a way that would portray Ohio State as being this tough football team, which was such a dumb thing to begin with. Just go out there and win. Just go throw the football, run the football, do whatever it is you have to do. Win ugly. It does not matter how you win that football game. Just win it. Now, it ended up all working out at the end because they win a national championship. But some people say that that it did not work out at the end because you're still without a win over that team up north for now 4 straight years. Yes, fine. Beat Michigan on Saturday just so we could shut everybody up. I'm tired of hearing about the rivalry game. Not tired of hearing about it. I'm tired of hearing about, oh, man, it's the end of the world if they lose. I'm telling you, you lose to Purdue, I'm just as mad about losing to Purdue as I am about Michigan. Because losing to Purdue has the same impact as losing to Michigan. And maybe not, actually, because losing to Purdue is a bad loss. I don't think losing to Michigan is a bad loss. It's just bad in the eyes of those who eat, breathe, and sleep this rivalry. But I promise you, every athlete that is on this roster right now, the motivational factors that push these players nowadays, it's all about money. I don't, Jeremiah Smith says that I think these players are coached to say the right thing. Look, they want to beat Michigan too because they're competitive, but I just think it's one of those where they are motivated by money. They're no longer motivated about the coach that they play for, the program they play for, or the fan base, or it's simply where can they go to get the most money. So you're never going to convince me that these kids truly eat, breathe, and sleep this rivalry. So therefore, I think that's probably NIL more so than anything else. People, I know Shaw's on hold. He's going to talk about the college football playoff expansion or really just all the stuff that's leading to this. To me, I think it's NIL more so than anything because money's the number one factor. I don't think you have anybody on this roster that went to Ohio State for Michigan. I heard Urban Meyer on the Herd earlier today say that's why you commit to Ohio State is for this game. I'm like, I respectfully disagree. I respectfully disagree that anybody on that Buckeye roster specifically committed to Ohio State for this game. This is a cherry on top. This is a hell of an experience. You commit to Ohio State for probably money because the fact that you can get to the end, it used to just be facilities and your opportunity to get to the NFL and who was coaching. But it's all about money. It's all about getting to the NFL, yes. But I think if you had to put truth serum into every one of these athletes and they had to prioritize, all right, bullet points, why are you here? I don't even know where that pops up in that list. And what I mean by that is I'm not saying they don't care about this game. I think they care about this game more than others, but I don't think that they care about this game more than others, if you know what I mean. But nonetheless, 937-518-1410. I want to get to the Bengals in a moment. Joe Burrow had he met with the media earlier today. Rob, by the way, Rob's on the ESPN Dayton's YouTube channel. He says, yeah, it's about the bag now. It really is. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. We're all bag motivated, if you will. So nonetheless, but 937-518-1410. Shaw, what's up, man? Thanks for holding. Watch your mouth. No cussing.
Yeah.
I don't care how wrong you are, and you are wrong a lot. You do not get to cuss on these airwaves again. I mean, it's this time of year. It's every fall. You seem to lose your mind.
Unfortunately, you are correct.
Hey, how about Tressel popping up the Shador? How about that, huh? Big Browns fan. He's going to be my new Browns analyst moving forward.
There you go. Yeah, get him on more. I mean, no, I enjoy listening to him because his football knowledge is unrivaled. And even though he turned the rivalry around back in 2000, and it went very ugly for us for the next 15
when he
20
did that
years.
that speech at the shot.
Yep.
It reminded me a ton, and coaches have tried it. Like I remember Brian Kelly, who just got fired at LSU. You remember his debut his very first time in front of the LSU faithful. We should have known. Kev knew. I mean, he hated it right from that point on. When Brian Kelly debuted at an LSU basketball game, and it might have been a women's basketball game because I think it was with Kim Mulkey or whatever. But either way, the point is when he went out there to introduce himself to the home fans, he all of a sudden went out there with that little Southern Louisiana accent.
I was going to say, wasn't that family?
The family, my family. Yeah. Some coaches try to use these little introductory mic times with the crowd at a basketball game to resurrect their career. But the only one that's done anything similar, the one that reminded me the most of Tressel, although things were said different, is Curt Cignetti at Indiana.
Yep.
And we don't need to talk Indiana. That's apparently a trigger for you because that's when you dropped the F-bomb on the airwaves last time. So let's not go there. But Curt Cignetti's little message at an Indiana basketball game reminded me a lot of that Tressel message back in the day.
No, I agree 100%. The Tressel at Value City Arena, that message, I could almost recite it verbatim what he said. And after he said, and you'll be most proud of him in 300 and however many days it was, in the stadium in Ann Arbor, my jaw dropped and I said, well, this whole thing has completely changed and it may never be the same. And everybody I was in the room with was like, what are you talking about? I was like, he just put the emphasis back on the game, and that was something the previous coach never had. So,
back on the game and back on, dominating, recruiting the state and just go back to the well and start checking off and that's the thing when Ohio State football starts to decline, and it doesn't happen often, but when it does, it's go back to what works and just start, it's like a politician, which that's what he is. You just go back to just check it off the boxes, tell everyone what they want to hear and get everyone to buy back in. And that worked. And it's worked ever since. Urban was a rock star at that too. And he had the results to back it up as well.
100%. But he didn't have to go out there at center court and do the same type of speech because, well, he was Urban Meyer and Ohio State was still kind of rolling at that time. Yeah, there was a little couple down years, but I mean, it was still kind of rolling. And so he just picked up the mantle and went charging forward and beat Michigan 7 straight times. But nonetheless, moving it to 2025, I always have this conversation and I agree and I disagree all at the same time. Like, yes, in Ohio and Michigan, the rivalry will always mean something and it will always be top notch. And yes, it's must see TV and that last Saturday in November. But it's hard for me to say that it has the same significance after watching a team in 2022 and watching a team last year lose that game and then be able to go do what they were able to go do. Yes, moving forward, if, for instance, Washington was to beat USC, not Washington, but Washington was to beat Oregon, and then Purdue was to beat Indiana, and we were to beat Ohio State, yes, there's a slim chance that we could see each other next week. I think there would be more significance on that game than there would be this week, only because it's the Big Ten championship.
Yeah, the stuff that people say they hate about The rivalry meaning less because of the factors that have changed. I think some of the factors that have changed actually have a chance to make it bigger. I mean, I remember when Duke and Carolina, it was Krzyzewski's final game. The fact that, Duke and North Carolina, as dead even as that rivalry has been throughout its existence, the fact that they never ran into each other in the NCAA tournament until the Final Four a few years ago, I was like, oh, that's how you take that rivalry to the next level, when there's tournament games involved and single elimination involved and championships involved. I'm like, that's how you take it to the next level. That's what I'm excited about this. That's why I'm bummed that Michigan, I'm pulling, I like Underwood. I want them to be back in the national championship picture, because after this, I'm in the minority on this too. I don't want this to be the last week that they play. I would love to see them play. I don't care about the dynamic of playing a week later. I'm in the minority in that. And I definitely don't care about them running into each other for a potential third time if it happens in the college football playoff. I think that's how you take that rivalry. You modernize it and take it to the next level. You can't manufacture that, of course, but you could play a role in it if Michigan gets back to a national championship contending space, which they're close. If you have the quarterback, they have a quarterback. He just needs to continue developing the quarterback.
Right, 100%. And I can think there's one other way in my opinion, that you could move it even. I think you could regain the regular season bluster and everything about the rivalry if you moved it off the last week of the season, for those exact reasons that you were just talking about, and for them to possibly see each other in the Big Ten championship or in the college football playoff as well. If you moved it to, say, Bama, Tennessee week, so third week in October, and that's the same weekend as Red River Shootout, I think you would start seeing that the whole lore of the game, I think, would come back then. Or even better, you really want to set this thing in motion and really set it to the moon,
Kick it off every year. Every year. No tune-up games. I don't think that's terrible. I don't think it'll ever happen. But, that's –
I don't think it'll ever happen either.
Every year, that's how you kick off the season, and there's a chance it's not the last time you see – I wouldn't be against that. There are the old school people right now, like our caller Paul and Xenia, who threatened to jump off a bridge earlier. Right. I'm sure he's cringing at that. But there's nothing traditional about college sports anymore. So if you're going to go away from the traditional, do something impactful. And I think that would be impactful. I actually agree with you on that. I like it to kick it off the season. Every year, that's a tradition, Ohio State, Michigan. That's how you get the whole college football landscape's attention every single year. I wouldn't be against that.
And I mean, and then for instance, let's use your scenario too. Let's say we played in the college football playoff. Mm-hmm. So whoever loses right there, now you have all off season and you're playing the first game of the year. Imagine all that smack talk for 8 months. Yeah. Whoever wins.
And imagine keep going. Sorry.
No, you would be bringing as close to what it used to be for somebody my age and probably the older people as well, as close as you could get to it in this modern era of football. Everything else in football is progressing and moving forward. We didn't have the NIL. We didn't have transfer portal. Well, we have now, and there are some things that need to be adapted and changed and yada, yada, yada. But for the most part, it is a good thing. I was against the 12-team playoff when it first came in for a lot of the reasons that, have been proven absolutely incorrect. About the only thing that one of my talking points that's actually stayed was I think it has reduced the regular season a little bit. But overall, I still think it's a positive. So why not adapt and move around the biggest game of the season, move it to the beginning, and that's what I'm in favor of too. Is just because I think that's the closest way you can bring back the luster and everything. And my whole opinion of it changed in 22 when I was in Indianapolis, and I'm standing there and I'm watching TCU lose. Not TCU. No, that was TCU when they lost that year, which allowed Ohio State to get in. And obviously USC losing the night before. I sat there and I said, this entire rivalry has completely changed. We either adapt with college football or this rivalry will no longer be the biggest rivalry in sports. It won't be. So that's kind of what changed my thought process on it.
Yeah. But, and Shaw, thank you, man. I do have to pop out. Appreciate the call.
No worries.
Good job not cussing. Way to be an adult. Good job. Nice job, Shaw. Way to keep your composure today, you psycho. My goodness. Of all the words to drop on the air, luckily it didn't make it over the airwaves, but still. What a psychopath. All right. The other thing, I don't think it's a terrible idea. Shaw, you drive me nuts, but I don't think it's a terrible idea. If every year, to make the rivalry feel bigger again, to get it back to where it once was, to put all the emphasis on it, because keep in mind too, when you close out the regular season with it like this, you've given Michigan time to ruin it by being average throughout the season. Imagine if you kick off every season, because my favorite part about the Ohio State-Texas showdown was there was no primer games. You didn't really know what to expect. You just knew all you knew about that Ohio State-Texas game, other than the obnoxious amount of Arch Manning commercials that were being shoved in your face without the kid even proving that he could be a high-level QB outside of his last name. You had no clue what to expect, and that's what made that game feel so big outside of the fact that you had some of the preseason expectations, of course, but you didn't know what to expect. We knew Ohio State was a reigning defending national champion. All right. We knew that they put a lot of guys in the NFL. We knew that this season was specific. Like, let's be clear. We didn't know Ohio State was going to be this good back in September. This season was simply about this week, this game, because I think us as Buckeye fans, we were all going to be forgiving of Ryan Day for losing his quarterback and losing, a top receiver and losing a lot of weapons on defense. We were all going to be forgiving of Ryan Day if they didn't repeat as national champions, even if they, barely made the playoff again. We could forgive Ryan Day for all that. But what he had to do was win this Saturday, because that's how you check off. Okay, Buckeye fans, I got you. I finally won the rivalry game, even though he's done it already, but he puts an end to the 4 straight losses, right? He gets that win in the rivalry game. He's already won a national championship. I think he's going above and beyond at this point. Number 1 team in the country as we head into the final week of the regular season. Undefeated, reigning defending national champions, and a chance to beat Michigan on top of it and take that momentum into the playoffs so they can go on a nice run. We just had Jim Tressel on the show who said he's been at multiple practices. He watches this team, compares it to last year, and he's hesitant to say it's for sure better than last year, but he feels visually watching them, this team's better than last year. He feels that they're better than last year. I think this team could do it. And it's not that I didn't think this team could beat Michigan last year. Ryan Day got in the way. Ryan Day got in the way of them winning that game. He's not going to get away this weekend, you would like to think. But, man, what's also going to make it even sweeter is winning at the big house. It's one thing to win on your home field, and you want to win the rivalry game in front of your home fans, but to go silence 100,000+ fans of a cheating program, to hear that hush after that game, to finally get that, I think that's going to be phenomenal. But like I said, that Texas-Ohio State matchup to kick off the season, it just felt bigger. I think Ohio State-Texas in week 1 felt as big as it did because it was week 1. Week 2, it's a big-time matchup. We're excited for it. I think it meant more because it was week 1. And if you move to Ohio State, Michigan, if you want to get untraditional with college football, the way all of college athletics is becoming at this point, take that game from the final game of the regular season and put it slap dab in game 1. And I don't mean first Big Ten game of the season. I mean game 1. No, who the hell is that university to beat around before? No easy all-home game first month of the season stretch to set up Ohio State, Michigan in October. Ohio State, Michigan, week 1 every year. Because there is a chance they could face each other in the Big Ten championship. There is a chance they could face each other in the college football playoff. There's a chance you could play up to 3 times a year. Imagine kicking off the season, closing out the season like that. I would love that. I think that's actually a good idea. Shaw, you don't have many, but I'll get on board with that. Nonetheless, Andy, the Big Ten commissioner, says Ohio State 48, Michigan 10. That's his score prediction for the rivalry matchup coming up this weekend. 48-10. Holding them to 10 seems about right. That defense for Ohio, I think they're giving up about 7 points a game. I could see that. Michigan's offense is not very good. They have potential, but they're just not very good. That USC, I heard Urban Meyer say earlier today, he can't unsee that game. I could see the 48, though. We know Ohio State's offense is fantastic. But again, I need to know more about Carnell Tate. The things I've heard about Carnell Tate, there's a good chance we could see him on Saturday, but this might be a bigger problem. This injury of his might be way more concerning than what we actually know, which is pretty wild. So, to see him potentially on Saturday is going to be wild if that's the case. Jeremiah Smith, can't wait to see him out there. Andy said, okay, 34-10. 34-10. I think that's about 34-37 in that range, but who knows? We'll see. But Ryan Day, once he gets this win on Saturday, and I believe he will, man, what a wild last 12-month stretch to go from that dazed and confused look on his face after losing his fourth straight to winning a national championship, to running the table the next season, to being the number one team heading into the college football playoff, and getting a win over Michigan a year later. That's quite a 12-month stretch. And imagine if Ross Bjork, he would have been as impatient as LSU and some of these other programs who have just been firing their coaches left and right. Because Ohio State could have fired Ryan Day before the playoff last year. That would have been ridiculous, but it would have been justified. A lot of people would have felt fine with that. There was a lot of goofy people out there that actually said, I actually don't even want Ohio State to play in the playoffs. I can't stand another embarrassing loss. That's how low the program was a year ago at this time. My, how things have changed. Kudos to the patience of Ross Bjork for not pulling the trigger on what so many of you wanted, which was to fire Ryan Day. Let's get this done this weekend, nonetheless. All right. It's the Justin Kinner Show. If you missed our conversation with Jim Tressel, we have that again coming up for you to close out hour 2. We have a lot more coming your way. It's the Justin Kinner Show, presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun food, sports, and spirits.
Today's forecast, 100% chance of overreactions, heated debates, and a slight drizzle of hope for Bengals fans. Sorry, guy with Burrow jersey. You're listening to 1510 ESPN Radio.
The Cincinnati Bengals will be in action Thursday night against the Baltimore Ravens. By the way, I really do like I'm a fan of the Thanksgiving lineup. You know, there's sometimes some duds that they kind of sprinkle in there, but I kind of like the lineup for Thursday. Packers Lions, which is crazy because that division is so deep at this point that there's going to be a good team in that division that ultimately misses the playoff right now. I mean, it's pretty crazy that Detroit, that if the playoffs started today, and Detroit's a good team, if the playoffs started today, Detroit's not in the playoff. The Vikings 4-7, they're not, a concern or whatever, but the Packers sitting in the 6th spot, obviously, of the Bears sitting atop of the division in that 3 spot right now. But the Lions and the Packers on Thanksgiving, that'll be game 1, of course. And then after that, the Chiefs and the Cowboys. I think that's going to be a heck of a game. 2 big brands right there. But Chiefs 6-5. We talk about the Chiefs all the time as if, that's the standard. You want to have the success and the resume of the Chiefs when it comes to the playoffs and the Super Bowls. But this is a team that's desperately trying to maneuver itself to comfortably make the playoffs. And right now, they're not. They're in the playoff picture, but they're not comfortably locked in to the playoffs as we currently sit here right now. And the Cowboys got a big win recently, coming back from behind by double digits by 3 possessions to beat the Eagles this past Sunday. And then we'll close it out with the Bengals. Joe Burrow making his return, going to be at the Ravens on Thursday night. So it's funny. I listened to Sports Talk in the morning and Unsportsmanlike. Chris Canty, who Bengals fans don't really care for Chris Canty, but I thought he brought up some good points today. He brought up, why are people, so the Bengals lost obviously this past weekend and everyone said, that's it. No chance that this team makes the playoff. No chance. And I was one of them. But he brought up a good point. He said the one thing, like, this team's going to struggle to make the playoff if you're trying to look at the wild card, but this division is still very vulnerable. The Ravens have looked rough the last couple of weeks. I mean, they looked rough against the Cleveland Browns. They started out slow against the Jets. Now they're winning these games, but they didn't win comfortably against the Vikings. And Lamar just has not looked like Lamar. Lamar Jackson has not been great since returning from that injury. He's looked very average. His production has been very average. And I'm not saying he's an average quarterback by any means, but Lamar Jackson has not played well enough for us to sit here and act as if they're running away with this. So I do think that's something to keep an eye on, because unless all of a sudden Lamar returns to MVP form and dominates the rest of the way, I think that the Ravens are vulnerable. All right, Lamar Jackson is coming off of 3 straight games where he has thrown for under 200 yards. And in fact, 5 of his last 6 games, he has thrown for under 200 yards. And then that 6th game that I mentioned that he did throw for over 200 yards was sitting at 204. He's thrown 1 touchdown. Now, he threw 4 touchdowns against the Dolphins back on October 30th. But since then, in the 3 games since, 1 touchdown. And he hasn't thrown a touchdown in his last 2 games. They lost at Cleveland they won 23-16 at Cleveland. They won 23-10 at home against the Jets. They're not scoring at ease. Now, they could potentially score at ease against this Bengals defense, of course, but I don't think that the Ravens are a team that I think are playing. I mean, everyone's like, they've won 4 straight. But they don't look like a dominating team. I think the AFC North is pretty vulnerable. Chris Canty on Sportsmanlike today said, well, what's necessarily changed? Because the Ravens won this past Sunday, all right? And the thing is the Bengals are 3 games back. Had the Bengals won this past Sunday, they'd still be 2 games back. Nothing has technically changed. And the important thing is that the Bengals still have the Ravens not once but twice moving forward. So that's going to be key for the Cincinnati Bengals, of course, as they, the Ravens will be, at home against the Bengals coming up, and then they play them again in mid-December. The Bengals have the Ravens twice coming up, and they're 3 games back. So Joe Burrow coming back actually might be a difference maker. I don't think it's going to be, but for every fan out there that has completely quit on this team after what you saw this past Sunday, the scenario didn't change. You were 3 games back of the AFC North heading in to Sunday, and you're heading into this Thursday still 3 games back. The situation hasn't changed. So Joe Burrow comes back. They have to win out to put them at 9 wins. They finished with 9 wins the last 2 seasons. They're looking to go 3 straight seasons finishing 9-8. Could Joe Burrow get the job done? Can he do what Joe Flacco didn't? And let's talk about what Joe Flacco did. He averaged just a hair under 300 yards a game. He averaged 2 touchdowns a game. He played at an MVP-like level. I know he's coming, this past one was not very good, but what Joe Flacco did in crunch time, when he dislocated his finger, left the game, got it taken care of, came back and led a scoring drive in the clutch moment of the game. I mean, it was unbelievable. Joe Flacco played phenomenal. Joe Flacco wasn't the problem. You know my thoughts yesterday. We saw that BS apology from Jamar Chase. I blame Jamar Chase for the loss this past weekend. Now you get Jamar Chase back on Thursday, and he loves playing the Ravens, but you're going to be without T. Higgins, who's out in concussion protocol. So the situation hasn't changed. You should still feel confident. If you felt confident heading into Sunday, you should feel confident heading into Thursday. The situation didn't change. You're 3 games back of a division that's very, very winnable. I have no faith in the Steelers. And the Ravens, yes, it's their division to lose, but they're not bulletproof. They got pushed around by 2 of the worst teams in the NFL in the Jets and the Browns the last 2 weeks. I know they came out on top, but they didn't. I mean, that's a division-leading Ravens team. They didn't sit there and make it look as if they were head and shoulders better than those 2 teams. Like, they just didn't. Shedeur Sanders had a chance to lead the team down the field and win that game. I think the Bengals still have a shot because I think the Ravens are going to leave that door open. But I do know that the stretch of games coming up for the Cincinnati Bengals, you have the Ravens in 2 of your next 3 games. You have the Bills in between there. And say what you want about the Dolphins, but they're playing better football right now. That's a capable offense. The Dolphins are a capable offense as far as that's concerned. So who knows? They could run the football. They could throw the football. That doesn't bode well for Cincinnati's defense. The bottom line is this next month, it could open the door for an opportunity for the Bengals, or it's just going to close completely shut coming up on Thursday. Because I do think if you lose to Baltimore on Thursday, now you're 4 games back, you're done. There's no chance. So here's the good thing. When you're playing must-win games, Joe Burrow seems to play at his highest level. They're 7-0 in his last 7 starts. He's averaging close to 300 yards, very similar numbers to what Joe Flacco was recently. You're going to get big production from Joe Burrow, you hope, but it still goes back to what this team has been impacted by all season. You guys keep making it about Joe Burrow. I'm here to tell you it's not about Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow coming back doesn't change anything other than the fact that you're getting your original starter back. But Joe Burrow coming back doesn't make this defense better, and it doesn't make them run better. Now, I've got to give Chase Brown credit. I'm not a big Chase Brown guy. I think that the Bengals continue to miss the mark on financially valuing the run game. But Chase Brown's been pretty dang good the last couple of weeks. I will give Chase Brown that. He ran all over the Steelers, but he ran all over the Steelers the first time. He's had way more bad games than good games, but to his credit, he's been pretty good the last couple of games. He was pretty good against the Patriots. He was very good against the Steelers. Chase Brown, 19 carries, 107 yards. I'll give him that. So we'll see. If you get a big game from him, I think the defense is horrendous. I just have no faith in that defense. I'm trying to put some positive spins here for you. I'm struggling to do it with that defense. It's embarrassingly constructed. It's embarrassingly bad. You're playing Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen over the next 3 weeks. You just faced probably the MVP. When you look at the quarterback, Drake May for the Patriots, he's in the MVP conversation. But you're playing Lamar Jackson, who's won 2 MVPs, Josh Allen, who just won his first MVP last year, and you're playing those 2 guys 3 times playing those guys over the next 3 weeks. That's a tough stretch of games against that defense. I'm glad that Joe Burrow makes you all warm and fuzzy inside. I just think, man, that's a tough stretch of games. We'll see what happens. 937-518-1410. Does Joe Burrow coming back for Thursday night's Thanksgiving Day showdown with the Baltimore Ravens, does that make you feel any different about the Bengals' chances? To Chris Canty's point, nothing really changed. You were 3 games back heading into Sunday when you thought you had a shot, and you're 3 games back heading into Thursday night's showdown with the Baltimore Ravens. So that hasn't changed. The only thing that's changing is Joe Burrow is coming back. But what does Joe Burrow necessarily bring to the table to make you feel that they have a chance? I'd love to know. What is Joe Burrow going to accomplish now for this team that wasn't being provided during his absence? 937-518-1410. Why do you feel the Bengals have a shot now that Joe Burrow is back? That's what I want to know. We'll take your calls and your texts when we come back. More of the Justin Kinner Show next.
Yeah, of course Kinner relates to Shedeur Sanders. He hasn't taken any first-team reps either. The Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio.
Hi, this is